Hi everyone, this is Glenda Ganzon and welcome to my Human Anatomy and Physiology class. And for today's video, I'm going to discuss the anatomy of the endocrine system. So stay tuned. Compared to other organs of the body, the organs of the endocrine system are small and unimpressive. However, functionally, the endocrine organs are very impressive. And when their role in maintaining body's homeostasis is considered, they are true giants. So let's move on to the first structure or to the first part of the endocrine system, which is the hypothalamus. The major endocrine organs of the body include the pituitary, thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, pineal, and thymus glands. The pancreas and the gonads also are included in this part. So the hypothalamus, which is the part of the nervous system, is also considered as the major endocrine organ because it produces several hormones. It is an important autonomic nervous system and endocrine control center of the brain located inferior to the thalamus. Although the function of some hormone producing glands is purely endocrine, the function of others like pancreas and gonads is mixed, both endocrine and exocrine. Okay, so let's move on to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is approximately the size of a pea, and it is hangs by a stalk from the inferior surface of the hypothalamus of the brain, where it is snugly surrounded by the Turk's saddle of the sphenoid bone. It has two functional lobes, the anterior pituitary, which is glandular tissue, and the posterior pituitary, which is the nervous tissue. So there are hormones of the anterior pituitary and that may affect many body organs. The first one is the growth hormone, or we call it as GH. So growth hormone is a general metabolic hormone. However, its major effects are directed to the growth of skeletal muscles and long bones of the body. It is a protein-sparing and anabolic hormone that causes amino acid to be built into proteins and stimulates most target cells to grow in size and divide. Another is the prolactin, or PRL. So prolactin is a protein hormone structurally similar to growth hormone, and it is known target in humans is the breast, because after childbirth it stimulates and maintains milk production by the mother's breast. Another is the adrenocorticotropic hormone. I'll repeat that: adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, and it regulates the endocrine activity of the cortex portion of the adrenal gland. The next one is the thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, and it is also called as the thyrotropin. I'll repeat that: thyrotropin hormone, which influences the growth and activity of the thyroid gland. Another is the gonadotropic hormones, and it is regulate the hormonal activity of the gonads, or the ovaries and testes. Another is the follicle stimulating hormones, or FSH. So this FSH stimulates follicle development in the ovaries. As the follicles mature, they produce estrogen and eggs that are needed for ovulation. In men, FSH stimulates sperm development by the testes. Another is the luteinizing hormone, or LH. It triggers ovulation of an egg from the ovary and causes the ruptured follicle to produce progesterone and some estrogen. In men, LH stimulates testosterone production by the interstitial cells of the testes. So here are the hormones of the posterior pituitary. The posterior pituitary is not an endocrine gland in the strict sense because it does not make the peptide hormone. It releases, but it simply acts as a storage area for hormones made by hypothalamic neurons or hypothalamic neurons. So the first one is the oxytocin. So the oxytocin released in significant amount only during childbirth. And in nursing women, it stimulates powerful contraction of the uterine muscles during labor and during sexual relations and during breastfeeding, and also causes milk ejection, or what we call as the letdown reflex in a nursing woman. Another is the Anti-Diuretic Hormone or ADH. ADH causes the kidneys to reabsorb more water from the forming of urine, and as a result, urine volume decreases and blood volume increases in larger amounts. ADH also increases blood pressure by causing constriction of the arterioles, so it is sometimes referred to as the vasopressin. I'll repeat, vasopressin. Okay, so let's move on to the next gland, which is the thyroid gland. So the thyroid gland is a hormone-producing gland that is familiar to most people, primarily because many obese individuals blame their overweight condition on their glands from the thyroid. So the thyroid gland is located at the base of the throat, just inferior to the Adam's apple, where it is palpated during the physical examination. Another is the lobe. It is fairly large gland consisting of two lobes joined by the central mass, or what we call as the isthmus. Internally, the thyroid gland is composed of hollow structure, and it is called as follicles, which stores a strictly colloidal material. A thyroid hormone, often referred to as the body's major metabolic hormone, and it is actually two active, which is the iodine-containing hormones, and the thyroxine or T4, and triiodothyronine, or that is the T3. I'll repeat, they are the thyroxine or T4 and triiodothyronine or T3. Thyroxine is a major hormone secreted by the thyroid follicles, and most triiodothyronine is formed at the target tissues by conversion of thyroxine to the triiodothyronine. Thyroid hormone controls the rate at which glucose is burned, oxidized, and converted to body heat and chemical energy. It is also important for normal tissue growth and development. Calcitonin decreases blood calcium levels by causing calcium to be deposited in the bones. So calcitonin is made by the so-called parafollicular cells found in the connective tissues between the follicles. Okay, let's move on to another gland, which is the parathyroid gland. And this parathyroid gland are mostly tiny masses of glandular tissue, and it is located on the posterior surface of the thyroid gland. The parathyroid secrete parathyroid hormone, or what we call as the PTH or parathormone, which is the most important regulator of calcium ion homeostasis of the blood. PTH is a hyperkalemic or hypercalcemic. I'm sorry for that. I'll repeat, PTH is a hypercalcemic hormone. That is, it acts to increase blood level of calcium, whereas calcitonin is a hypokalemic hormone. So PTH also stimulates the kidneys and intestines to absorb more calcium. Okay, let's move on to the adrenal gland. This is another gland located in the endocrine system. Although the adrenal gland looks like a single organ, it is structurally and functionally two endocrine organs in one. The adrenal cortex produces three major groups of steroid hormones, which are collectively called as corticosteroids, mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and sex hormones. I'll repeat, they are called corticosteroids, which are mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and sex hormones. So the mineralocorticoids, primarily aldosterone, are produced by the outermost adrenal cortex cell layer. Mineralocorticoids are important in regulating the mineral or salt content of blood, and particularly the concentration of the sodium and potassium ions, and they also help in regulating the water and electrolyte balance in the body. Another is the renin. It is an enzyme produced by the kidneys when the blood pressure drops, and it also causes the release of aldosterone by triggering a series of reactions that form angiotensin. I'll repeat, it causes the release of aldosterone by triggering the series of reactions that form angiotensin, which is a stimulator of aldosterone release. The next one is the atrial natriuretic peptide. I'll repeat, atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP. So this one prevents aldosterone release, and its goal being reduced blood volume and blood pressure. Another one is the glucocorticoids, which is the middle cortical layer, mainly produces glucocorticoids, which include the cortisone and cortisol. The glucocorticoids promote normal cell metabolism and help the body to resist long-term stressors, primarily by increasing blood glucose levels, and thus it is said to be hyperglycemic hormone. It also reduces pain and inflammation by inhibiting some pain-causing molecules called prostaglandins. The next one is the sex hormones. Both male and female sex hormones are produced by the adrenal cortex throughout life in relatively small amounts, although the bulk of sex hormones produced by the innermost cortex layer are androgens, that is the male sex hormones, and some estrogens, that is the female sex hormones, are also formed. Another hormones of the adrenal medulla, the posterior pituitary, which develops from a knot of nervous tissue. The first one is the catecholamines. So when the medulla is stimulated by sympathetic nervous system, neurons, its cells release two similar hormones, that is the epinephrine, and that is also called as adrenaline, and the other one is norepinephrine or noradrenaline. into the bloodstream. Collectively, these hormones are referred to as the catecholamines. So basically, the catecholamines increase heart rate, blood pressure, and blood glucose levels and dilate the small passageways of the lungs. The catecholamines of the adrenal medulla prepare the body to cope with the brief, short-term stressful situation and cause the so-called alarm stage of the stress response. Okay, let's move on to the pancreatic islets. The pancreas, located close to the stomach in the abdominal cavity, is a mixed gland. So the first part is the islet of the Langerhans, and this is also called as pancreatic islets. They are little masses of hormone producing tissue that are scattered among the enzyme producing actinar tissue of the pancreas. There are two important hormones produced by the islet cells, and they are insulin and glucagon. Islet cells act as fuel sensors, secreting insulin and glucagon appropriately during fed and fasting states. High level of glucose in the blood stimulate the release of insulin from the beta cells of the islets. Glucagon's release by the alpha cells of the islets is stimulated by low blood glucose. Insulin acts on just about all the body cells and increases their ability to transport glucose across the plasma membrane. Because insulin sweeps glucose out of the blood, its effect is said to be hypoglycemic. Another is glucagon, which acts as an antagonist of insulin. It helps to regulate blood glucose levels, but in a way opposite that of insulin. Its action is basically hyperglycemic, and its primary target organ is the liver, which it stimulates to break down stored glycogen into glucose and release the glucose into the blood. Another gland is the pineal gland, and it is also called the pineal body. It is a small cone-shaped gland. The pineal gland hangs from the roof of the third ventricle of the brain. Melatonin is the only hormone that appears to be secreted in substantial amounts by the pineal gland. The levels of melatonin rise and fall during the course of day and night. Peak levels occur at night and make us drowsy, as melatonin is believed to be the sleep trigger, and that plays an important role in establishing the body's day and night cycle. Another gland is the Thymus Gland. It is large in infants and children and decreases in size throughout the adulthood. The Thymus Gland is located in the upper thorax, posterior to the sternum, and the thymus produces a hormone called thymosin and other that appear to be essential for normal development of a special group of white blood cells, or the T lymphocytes or T cells, and the immune response. Another part is the gonads. The female and male gonads produce sex hormones that are identical to those produced by adrenal cortex cells. The major difference are the source and relative amount produced. So the hormones of the ovaries, the female gonads or ovaries, are pair of almond-sized organs, and the female gonads are located in the pelvic cavity. Besides producing female sex cells, ovaries produce two groups of steroid hormones, and they are the estrogen and progesterone. Alone, the estrogen are responsible for the development of sex characteristics in women at puberty, acting with progesterone Estrogen promote breast development and cyclic changes in the uterine lining, that is the menstrual cycle. Progesterone, on the other hand, acts with estrogen to bring about the menstrual cycle during pregnancy, and it quiets the muscles of the uterus so that an implanted embryo will not be aborted, and helps prepare breast tissue for lactation. On the other hand, the testes of the male are paired oval organs in a sac, and the testes are suspended in a sac, the scrotum, outside the pelvic cavity. In addition to male sex cells or sperm, the testes also produce male sex hormones or androgens, of which testosterone is the most important. At puberty, testosterone promotes the growth and maturation of the reproductive system organs to prepare the young man for reproduction, and it also causes the male secondary sex characteristics to appear and stimulates male sex drive. Testosterone is also necessary for the continuous production of sperm and other hormone-producing tissues and organs besides the major endocrine organs. Pockets of hormone-producing cells are found in fatty tissue and in the walls of the small intestine, stomach, kidneys, and heart organs, whose chief function have little to do with the hormone production. The next one is the placenta. Placenta is the remarkable organ formed temporarily in the uterus of the pregnant woman. In addition to its roles as respiratory, excretory, and nutrition delivery system for the fetus, it also produces several proteins and steroid hormones that help to maintain the pregnancy and pave the way for delivery of the baby. So, during very early pregnancy, a hormone called human chronic gonadotropin or HCG, I'll repeat, human chorionic gonadotropin or HCG is produced by the developing embryo, and then the fetal part of the placenta, the HCG stimulates the ovaries to continue producing estrogen and progesterone so that the lining of the uterus is left off in the menses. HPL or the human placental lactogen works cooperatively with estrogen and progesterone in preparing the breast for lactation. Relaxin, that is another placental hormone, causes the mother pelvic ligaments and pubic symphysis to relax and become more flexible, which eases birth passage. So this ends my discussion about the anatomy of the endocrine system. Thank you so much for watching and for listening to my discussion.